If SEO hasn't worked well for you or you've never managed to take advantage of it fully, this is the only video you need to watch. Because in this video, I'm going through exactly how SEO works in 2026, not the stuff you'll read in a blog post written 5 years ago, but the actual framework that we're using right now for SaaS companies in HR, fintech, martech, and half a dozen other verticals to turn organic search into a predictable revenue channel. And if you're wondering why you should trust me, my name is Eddie. I'm the founder of Exceed SEO, and what makes us different from most agencies you've worked with in the past is before I ever touched SEO, I spent years in B2B software sales, which means I think about this entirely differently. We don't report on traffic, we report on demos, trials, and SQLs. And by the end of this video, you're gonna have the complete picture: keyword strategy, content strategy, technical SEO, digital PR, and AI search optimization. So you can actually start making real sales from SEO, not just impressions and other vanity metrics. Let's get into it. The most common thing we see in companies, and honestly agencies as well, is treating traffic as the main goal of SEO. And when traffic is the goal, well, your whole strategy is pointing in the wrong direction. You end up going after high volume, informational keywords. They have tons of volume and they look great on reports, but they don't convert. And while all that is happening, they're completely missing the people who are actually searching for the specific solution, the ones who are ready to buy. Lower volume, but extremely strong buying intent. And the second thing we see is content that's written for search engines and not the users who will actually read it. It's generic, surface level, there's no real insight, no expertise, and nothing that's genuinely valuable or help someone make a decision. The third failure is the technical side, and this one is actually interesting because we see the two opposite problems happening at once. Some companies get completely obsessed with technical SEO, they're fixing every minor crawl issue, tweaking things endlessly, and they never actually publish any content. Others go the complete opposite direction, they just push out content at scale without any technical foundation in place at all. Both are huge problems. I mean, if Google can't properly crawl and index your site, nothing else really matters, but technical SEO alone won't grow your pipeline either. Now, those three things have always been issues, right? But what specifically changed in 2026 is that AI search has gone from a nice to have to an actual acquisition channel. ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google AI overviews, these are channels that are actively sending traffic to your website and influencing purchase decisions as we speak. The good news is, though, that these two things aren't as different as people think. I mean, if you've nailed traditional SEO, you have good content, real authority, and a solid technical foundation, you're already most of the way there for AI search too. And to succeed with SEO in 2026, you need to understand how search and search engines work today, not how they worked a couple of years back. And I would say the biggest change that we've seen in the past couple of years is the very, very quick rise of zero-click searches. So a zero-click search essentially means that someone is searching for a specific topic, but they're not clicking on any of the results. And of course, the biggest reason why zero-click searches are growing at this rapid pace is mainly due to AI overviews now being featured more frequently on the Google search engine results page. And let's have a look at a real example. So I put best CRM for real estate into Google, and we instantly get met by an AI overview here that start mentioning different brands and solution. We can also see the paid ads that are appearing here. This is a very commercial results page, so there's a lot of paid ads being shown in this specific query. And then we have, the organic listing, but here we have a Reddit thread, another third-party news publisher. We have, of course, the people also ask. We then have another organic listing followed by this discussions and forums. You can also turn that into YouTube videos, etc. There's a lot more surface to be had on the Google SERP, but it requires publishing content in different formats on different channels in order to populate your brand in these results as much as you possibly can. And of course, the AI overviews differ based on what type of query you actually put into Google. So for the longest time, the blue color here, which are informational keywords, have always been kind of the major driver of AI overviews because it's very easy to summarize this informational questions. But we're starting to see, navigational, also commercial and transactional keywords starting to trigger AI overviews more frequently than they did perhaps in the beginning. And let's also dissect, what the AI overviews are saying based on different types of queries. So putting in a very top of funnel query like what is a CRM? This is a very generic search. It's like an explainer search, very, very top of funnel. And what you see here is that the AI overview does a pretty good job of answering this query. I get my answer straight here in the AI overview. I don't really need to press any of the results to get this definition. Pretty good summary here in the AI overview. And these are, of course, then the keywords and the queries that are most likely to trigger an AI overview, but also most likely to result in a zero-click search, because the users come here, they get their answer, they don't have to click on any website to understand this basic concept. But it looks completely different if you do go in the bottom of the funnel, you start asking for solutions. Even though the AI overview still shows up in this search, the AI overview looks vastly different. And the first thing is, of course, there are brands and products being mentioned, and this is where you should focus your efforts in 2026. You want to show up for the queries that signal a strong buying intent. In the AI overview, if this search results in a 0-click, at least you have the chance to show up in the AI overview and get your brand in the conversation. But I would also make the argument that even though the AI overview does a good job of summarizing some solutions, if you're a law firm in this case and you're looking for a new CRM, you're not going to make any buying decisions based on this overview only. So you're actually prone to go a bit deeper and click some of the links, have a look at the Reddit threads, check some of the organic listings to go a bit deeper into your search journey. So not only do these queries show brands in the AI overview, which is super valuable real estate for any brand to occupy, but there's also a deeper intent here. They're not going to get their answer fully from the AI overview, and that's the reason why these type of queries still have a pretty strong click-through rate. And another piece that we're seeing in 2026, and all the recent Google updates and the helpful content updates are pointing in this direction, and they want more expertise, more authority, and what they call EEAT essentially. So there's a lot of companies that are doing this really, really well today, and it essentially means that in your content, you want to show the expertise that you have around the topic. And I think RFs is a great example of just this. So they have a ton of content on their website that is basically built from the data that they gather from their own product. They're taking original data from their product and kind of putting that data into different scenarios to make certain conclusions, in this case about how best listicles are performing in AI. So something they do really well is of course using their own input, their own data, and that makes the content extremely unique. But they also have very, very optimized and good author pages, and this is a way to signal authority and expertise to Google. So they have a very skilled team of marketers, and the author page is a great way to show that expertise to search engines. You most likely have a subject matter expert on your team, and that should be the person that is authoring these articles and writing this content, because then you have a way higher chance of ranking and driving traffic. And RFs even goes as far as having an author, but then also having a revision by another person that of course has a author page, lifting up the experience and the skills this person have in this niche. And this of course in the long run spills over to authority. So if we have a look at RFs and their blog in this example, they have extremely strong authority. Google trusts RFs within the SEO content marketing space just because they've been publishing really helpful, authoritative content that are expertise led and basically built on their own insights and data. And now let's have a quick discussion about the AI search piece and how AI engines now have become a force to be reckoned with in terms of product discovery and how people search online today. So if we have a look at a query like what are the best CRM for law firms, and we put that into ChatGPT, we can see that it instantly goes into search mode, right? So this is extremely important. It doesn't feel that it can answer this question based on the trained data, so it triggers search automatically. That's very important because then it goes and scans through the existing results and start mentioning specific brands. But if we have a look at the sources here, we can see that the majority of the sources are listicles. So different product roundups, top 5, top 10, etc. So ChatGPT really loves the comparison content for these bottom of the funnel queries. So you want to be writing a lot of listicles, a lot of competitor comparisons, because this is the real estate that is worth having in AI in 2026. And if we contrast this with a more, top of funnel search, so what is the best way to track and close legal leads with a CRM? And if we put this into ChatGPT, you can see that it doesn't go into search mode, and it literally gives you an answer based on trained data. It doesn't pull any sources, it doesn't mention any brands. So this visibility is close to useless in 2026 because your content is not being cited as a source. And then of course to the most important question, well, what should I do in order to show up more for these searches, especially the bottom of the funnel searches and people actively looking for your solution, both on Google and AI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, etc. So we ran a pretty deep study. So we analyzed over 20,000 AI responses for this particular type of query, so software recommendations, and we saw some interesting trends. So the type of content that AI cites the most for these types of queries are product listicles. So this could be 10 best CRMs in 2026, but it could also be best HubSpot alternatives or HubSpot versus Salesforce. So since you are almost always asking for multiple options in your queries when you're looking for a product, that's also the type of content that AI likes to cite for these specific queries, because it goes very much in line with how people compare products. They typically don't compare products in isolation, they compare multiple products against a set criteria. And if we then also have a look at, well, who does get cited the most? Well, now we know what gets cited, which is comparison content. But if we look at who does get cited the most, actually third-party websites are the most frequently cited sources for these type of queries. So what this means is that of course it's very important to have, your own own branded content that's living on your website, because that will can still get cited, and it will most definitely influence the output, large language models. But the most important piece here is making sure that your brand is also mentioned in these third-party sources. You're essentially signaling to search engines that we're not only talking about ourselves on our own website, we're also being featured on these other authoritative, trustworthy websites as well. So now that you understand how search works in 2026, the new nuances that make search more exciting but also slightly different than it was before, now let's talk about what type of keywords should you target and should you show up for in 2026. And this is where most people go wrong. And this ties back to what I said earlier about the traffic first mindset, just treating SEO as a pure traffic generator, not really thinking about what quality that traffic has. And I want to show you a great example of this, and we'll stick with the CRM for law firms narrative and example here. So in case you were offering a CRM for lawyers and law firms, the keyword "what is a paralegal" might be, it is within your industry, it's within your category. And back in the day, this was kind of the keywords to target just because they had so much volume. So what you thought here was that, okay, even though this is a keyword that has zero buying intent, nobody's actually looking for our software, it's still a keyword within our broader category, and it has a ton of searches. So hopefully some of these people will eventually convert. But of course, anyone Googling "what is a paralegal" is not going to be buying a CRM software for lawyers anytime soon. So what you should do instead is simply just target the searches and the queries that people who are looking for your product are actually using. CRM software for law firms is one of those examples. And as you can see, the volume is vastly less. But the trick here is that the keyword here has a ton of buying intent. So the people that are Googling this keyword, they're not just looking for general explanations or definitions. They are starting a buying journey, and now they're looking for software options within your category. And funny enough, these keywords that convert the best and have, slightly lower volume also tend to have lower difficulty. So this is the biggest opportunity in B2B software SEO today. And let's have a look at, the awareness journey of your typical software buyer. So the "what is a paralegal" example fits well into the unaware stage. They are not aware of the problem, they're not aware of their needs, they're looking for, general information within your broader category. I would not prioritize these type of searches in 2026, because this is exactly where AI is out competing you. They're summarizing these answers in the AI overview as well as in ChatGPT. So there's no point in investing resources here anymore. What you should focus on is the other 4 parts of the awareness journey. So the ones that are aware that they have a problem that you of course solve, they're aware that there is solutions to these problems, which is a good example of the search I just showed you. And then also we have product aware. So the people that are aware of your brand and your product. So these are branded searches. We can't necessarily control, the volume of these searches, but we can definitely optimize our website to show up for our brand and people that look for our pricing or features, etc. And then of course we have the most aware. And these are the people that are typing in your brand, maybe demo, trial, like they're looking to actually get started. I would put like your pricing page in this category as well, like the last steps before they actually convert and become a customer. But the ones that we can control the most with SEO are the problem and the solution aware searches. And if we map these to some keyword examples within the same example we've been running here, so you have the problem aware, which would be, for example, how to improve law firm profitability. That is a job to be done keyword. Someone is looking to solve a specific problem, low profitability, where your solution actually might be the right solution in this case. So this is a great keyword to show up for. You're capturing people as they're looking to understand their problem and research why they have this problem. And then once they understand that there is solutions to these problems, they will start looking for the type of keywords that I just showed you. So CRM software for law firms is a great example. These people are aware now that they have a problem. They're also aware that there is a solution to that problem, and now they're looking for that specific solution. If we have a look at the product aware, it could be, your brand features or alternatives to another competitor, or comparison, a head-to-head comparison between 2 competitors. So these people are product aware. They're either aware of your product or maybe aware of some of your competitors' products. So I would argue that these are the lowest hanging fruits that you should go after, the competitor comparisons. So mapping out all of your main competitors and looking at how much volume these kind of searches have. And then we have the most aware, which is essentially your brand pricing, your brand features, your brand demo, etc. So the best way we found to understand how people in your category are actually searching when they're looking for a software is actually talking to your customer facing team. So this could be, your sales team, your customer success team, your support team, essentially the people that are communicating with prospects and existing customers every single day. That is a gold mine of insights for both your SEO strategy, but then also later on the content that you will be producing. So this is an example of the questions that we typically ask sales reps when we start working with a new client. So The main goal here is essentially identifying the best customers, essentially who are staying the longest, who are paying the most, which signals a strong product market fit. And then we want to dig deep into that specific customer. So we want to define the dream client, and then we want to understand the pain points and the challenges of that exact dream client. So what were the pre-purchase like challenges that drove them there, decision-making process, key drivers of value, potential objections, etc. And then we want to find the patterns that kind of connect all of this together. So what are the patterns and the indicators of people that are likely to buy, likely to, get on a big package and have a healthy revenue and provide a healthy revenue, but also stay with you the longest. And those are the exact people you want to target with your SEO. The dream clients that stay the longest, pay the most, and are the most enjoyable to work with. So once you have talked with your customer facing teams and you've gathered these insights and you have a couple of meeting transcripts to go off, then you want to make sure to transfer those insights into actual keywords that signal these pain points and these solutions that they're looking for. And we're using SEMrush, which is a great tool. And one of the best tools I use for finding specific keywords is, of course, the keyword magic tool. So here we could essentially just put in, CRM software as a seed keyword, and we'll get all the different variations that include this specific phrase. And you can, of course, do this for a ton of different keywords. You can then save these to specific lists, etc. So here you want to find the keywords that essentially signal that your dream client is looking for a software like yours, or perhaps looking to solve a problem that you can help them solve. So for example, if your core target audience are, in this case, lawyers, then we want to find CRM software keywords that go towards that. And we can, of course, find that by just maybe putting in law to see what we get out of that. And here we can instantly see, a ton of relevant keywords around the specific lawyer vertical. So CRM software for law firms, client intake and CRM software. And what you can see here is that, okay, they have lower volume, but they also have lower difficulty. So they have extremely strong buying intent, but are also not that difficult to rank for. So this is the golden opportunity for all software companies. Go after these niche, long tail keywords that have a strong buying intent and low competition. And once you've run through this process and essentially taken all of your insights and looked for keywords that attract these exact people that you're looking to attract, you should end up with a rather big keyword list of all the keywords that you found. We typically export these into a CSV or an Excel file, and then you basically just want to structure your keyword research. So you have a few different categories, which is product category, which is all the software, tools, solution related keywords, but you might also find a lot of competitor keywords. So people that are looking for alternatives to some of the bigger CRMs out there, or maybe people that are looking to, compare two different vendors head to head. So it could be, Salesforce versus Attio, Salesforce versus HubSpot, etc. And then we also have the job to be done keywords. And this is more in the problem awareness stage. So people that are looking to either solve a specific problem or maybe achieve a specific outcome. And they tend to follow this how-to framework. So it could be, anything that, how to send a reminder email. It could be how to integrate multiple CRM systems, anything that is related to the problems that you solve for your specific clients and that can be solved with a CRM. When you go through all of these keywords, you do want to set a relevancy score, and this is based on the insights that you gathered when talking to your customer facing teams. Some of these keywords will be more relevant to your product and your offering, and some will be less relevant. And you want to maybe just simply have a tier between low, medium, and high that dictate, okay, how relevant is this keyword for us? And once you've done that, you should end up with a pretty decent list of keywords that all have, high relevancy, and this is where you want to start, and this is where you want to focus. It's a mix of product category keywords, job to be done keywords, as well as competitor variations. And once you've shortlisted your keywords, you then want to create a content strategy and a content sprint. So there's a couple of things you want to think about here. And the first thing is, creating topic clusters. So you don't just want to push out and write articles in isolation, but you also want these articles to be connected, to have a semantic connection. They are around the same topic, around the same semantics. And by doing that, you're building small keyword clusters that all interlinked with each other. And that also increases the chances of ranking, because Google then sees that your topical authority for that specific topic is extremely strong. Something else that we want to think about is, of course, finding keywords that have, reasonable volume, but most importantly, low competition. So as you start out your SEO process or start with this type of strategy, you want to start by targeting the lowest hanging fruits first and the keywords that have the strongest buying intent. So let's say we were to publish 5 articles per month. We would go after a few keywords each month, and all of them at the end of the 3-month period will have created 3 distinct topic clusters. So we have the first topic cluster, which is around, in this case, our main competitor when it comes to CRM for law firms, which is Clio. So we want to create a ton of articles around Clio. So Clio alternatives, which we are, Clio pricing, another competitor, Lawmatics versus Clio, and a head-to-head comparison. And then maybe also showing up for people who are looking for Clio reviews, Clio features. And what we're essentially doing here is that anytime someone is looking and researching into one of our competitors, we're showing up throughout that journey. And we're putting our brand in the mix as a solid alternative for lawyers. If we have a look at the second topic cluster, this is the product category cluster, and we're going after a ton of long tail keywords in this example. So the main one, which is CRM software for law firms, this is our main category keyword. We are a CRM software and our main target audience is law firms. But then we also want to create a couple of posts around similar type of searches. Some are more long tail, meaning longer, such as client intake and CRM software for small law firms, etc. So we're building a category cluster here around the most common searches people use when they're trying to look and find our exact product. And the third topic cluster is around pain points and essentially outcomes that your client wants to achieve. A lot of these are around, the sales process to make sure we keep the topical authority intact. So profitability, lead management, sales process, client intake process. So here we're essentially building a cluster to capture the people earlier in their buying journey when they're researching problems and researching specific outcomes they want to achieve. So now we talked about gathering customer intelligence and mapping that intelligence to actual search behavior. Now let's talk about probably the most important part of SEO, which is the actual content strategy and how you should write content to not only rank, but also convert your visitors. And let's start by having a look at a bad example of how to write content. And just looking at a glance here, you'll see very generic, very surface level content and information that you can literally find anywhere. You could get this type of information by just putting it into Google and seeing it in the AI overview, but also ChatGPT would do a way better job of providing this information to you. So if you don't have anything interesting to add to the conversation, any new insights, any angles or opinions, you probably shouldn't create the content in the first place. But the biggest thing that actually separates good versus bad content is how you strategize your content. Of course, the first thing we talked about was the keywords that you target, which is a strong indicator. You want to target bottom of the funnel keywords with buying intent. If you start there, you're already halfway. But what you want to do then is your analysis process. So for each keyword you target, you want to do an analysis of the existing search results. So you want to go through the existing results for the keyword that you want to target to understand what's currently ranking and what's performing good to date. And the whole point of this is to ultimately end up with a more helpful, more useful piece of content than what's currently out there. Another thing in the research and analysis phase that we do before we even start writing any content is that we have our content strategists go through this questionnaire, which is a set of questions that essentially allows you to dive deeper into the intent and the search intent behind a specific query. So we want to define exactly what they're trying to learn with this specific search, like what are they looking to achieve, summarizing the core problem the people that are searching this query has, also looking at what have they already tried and failed with. That's also a really good way of resonating with this audience to not only know what pains they have, but also know what they've tried in the past to solve that specific pain. And we also, of course, based on the SERP analysis, want to look at where are the competitors vulnerable. This is our gap, and this is our chance to make our content more competitive, more helpful, and more useful to our audience. Once we've done this initial research, we then want to focus on the strategy. What's our strategy for ranking and converting our audience with this piece of content? The first part is to understand, well, what type of content format will we use? And if we look at the majority of the bottom of the funnel keywords, almost always it's list posts. So an article listing multiple alternatives, comparing them against each other. So let's say we're targeting a bottom of the funnel query. That's the type of content we would produce. And we validate that by looking at the SERP and seeing what content that ranks today. We want to understand how we should position our client's product for this specific query. And I think the most important part here to make your content stick out is to look at the current marketing materials that you have. This is all about authority, originality, and adding expert input to your articles to make your arguments stronger, but also the piece more useful and helpful to your audience. So what you could look at is, do we have any existing marketing materials that we can tie into this article? Is there anyone on the team or anyone that we have a relationship that is a subject matter expert on this specific topic? We could have a quick interview with that person, get some quotes, perhaps even send the finished draft and get his input on some of the arguments we're making, any type of subject matter input is extremely valuable, not only for the users, but also search engines that see that as strong authority. And also original data. So maybe you have a product that produces a ton of useful data that you can use to make stronger arguments, but you could also, if you don't have any original data yourself, you can also find third-party data points and multiple of them and kind of analyze them together to create your own narrative and create your own kind of conclusion based on multiple data points that you have publicly available. So anything that you can insert into the article to signal authority, expertise, trust, and originality will take you a long way in 2026 when it comes to creating content. And I wanted to give some examples of the type of content that we focus on for our clients to drive qualified traffic that converts at a high percentage. So the first one is that we discussed earlier, the job to be done framework. So this is a problem that our clients' customers are currently facing, which is hiring bias. So bias in the hiring process, essentially. So we wrote an article around this specific topic because it's a problem that our client solves. So it drives extremely relevant traffic and problem-aware traffic to the site. The next content type is the category keyword. So here we wrote an article around the best AI candidate screening tools compared with each other. This comparison content works great on Google, but also in large language models for these product related queries. And that's where we want to show up and be visible when our clients search. The third one is the competitor alternatives articles. And I would argue that this is the biggest opportunity in SaaS SEO to date. And a lot of companies are not taking advantage of this fully. So mapping out your top 5, top 10 competitors and having a look at the search volume for competitor alternatives and then writing content around that specific content. This as well is serving Google well, but also searching large language models well. All of this comparison style content will be cited and used for these software recommendation prompts. And then the last one, which is another variant of the competitor keywords, is competitor versus competitor and a head-to-head comparison between two of your main competitors. You want to satisfy the search intent by giving a good assessment of how these two tools stack up against each other, but you can then also at the end tie in your own product as a good alternative to both. So here you're attracting the people that are comparing two of your competitors, but you also have a chance to pitch in your product on your terms. And when it comes to actually publishing content, and the question we often get is, well, how many articles should I publish per month? What's the optimal cadence, the optimal output? And even though there's no set figure, we tend to recommend our clients to publish between 4 to 6 articles per month. If you go below that, it will just take too much time to start seeing results and start building that authority that you need to rank. And I would say the sweet spot falls within 4 to 6, where you have a healthy publishing cadence, 1 to 2 articles per week, but also not that much content that you start marginalizing and limiting the quality of the content that you produce. So you want to find that fine line, and you never want to prioritize quantity before quality. There's a section in every SEO guide about technical SEO, and it usually covers 40 things that might or might not matter. I'm going to cut through the noise and tell you exactly what matters for you if you're a B2B software company. So technical SEO is extremely important. It is actually the foundation that can make or break your SEO strategy, but there's a few things that matter more than others, and that's what I'm going to focus on in this part of the video. So the first thing you always want to keep an eye on is the indexing and the crawling of your pages. So if you go to Google Search Console and you go to the indexing tab under pages, this is on our own website where we can see exactly how many URLs that are indexed currently and how many that are not indexed. And of course, we want to focus our energy on the actual URLs that are not indexed yet. And if we scroll down a bit on this page, we can see a quick summary of the potential problems with indexing these specific URLs. So you want to keep track of this. You want to dig deep into the specific URLs that you want to index on Google, but that are still not indexed, and figure out what's holding them back. Another way of doing this is to simply put the exact URL into this URL bar up top, where you can see exactly if a specific URL is indexed or not. You can also request indexing if you've recently published or updated the article, but this is an extremely important point to cover to make sure that you're not blocking your pages from being indexed on Google and being visible in the first place. And the second thing comes down to page speed and page performance. I would argue that that is the most important technical SEO optimization you can do from a pure user experience perspective. So it's extremely important that when someone clicks on your results, if it's on Google, maybe an AI source, that the page loads quickly. Otherwise, the risk that they bounce is extremely high. And Google actually has a free tool for this. It's called the Page Speed Insights. You can find it directly on Google, and you can simply just put in your URL in this analysis, and it will spit out a really good understanding of how your pages and your website as a whole is performing in terms of speed and performance. So what you'll see up top here is like the actual performance, what real users are experiencing. But for pure diagnostic purposes, you can also have a look at the bottom graph where the actual internet speed used is way slower and way worse. So this gives you a good understanding of how your pages perform when internet connection might be a bit unstable. And the purpose here is to make sure that, well, you're catering to all different audiences, not only the people who, might be sitting behind a desktop with pitch perfect internet. So this gives you a good understanding of what is taking up a lot of space on your pages and where you might be able to clean up to make the page speed faster and the page performance improved. And the third part I wanted to touch upon is site architecture. And this means essentially how all of your pages on your website connect to each other. And they connect to each other through what we call internal links. And you want to make sure that you have a purpose behind your internal linking structure. You want pages that are relevant to each other to have links in between them, because this will then signal to Google that, well, hey, here are related content assets within the broader topic X that we are discussing. So I ran a quick Screaming Frog audit of RF's website to illustrate how their website hierarchy and structure is built out. So what you see in front of you here is a simple node map that essentially breaks out the different clusters that they have. And the biggest one is, of course, originating from their homepage. So that's kind of the main page of the website. And of course, the main site or the main URL for the biggest cluster on their site. And then, of course, the homepage links out to a ton of different feature pages as the SEO reporting, etc. And then some of those pages in turn link to a third page. So that's like the main cluster around their website, around their homepage rather. And then of course they also have another cluster around their blog. So this could be a good exercise to run from time to time. Screaming Frog is a completely free tool that you can use and that you can get this type of visualization from to see how your pages are connected to each other. You can see the click depth, meaning how many clicks from the home page someone has to do in order to reach that page. And if there's any problems with the pages that you're seeing here, if they're indexable, if they're not indexable, and then going back to understanding why. And the fourth element I wanted to touch upon is what we call schema markup or structured data. So what this essentially is code baked into your content and your URLs that essentially tells Google not only what the page is about, but what the certain elements on the page are and what they are about. So a good example to validate this is to have a look at Google's own tool where you can analyze rich results for some of your URLs. So I picked a blog that we wrote for one of our clients where we have implemented all types of structured data, articles, breadcrumbs, FAQ, review snippets, as well as software apps. So structured data is basically a way of labeling the different sections on this exact page where we say that, well, hey, here's the FAQ, here we have some review snippets, and this is the article structured data. And your main goal with implementing these elements is to have richer results on Google. So for this specific article, we can see here that we have some review tags. We also have, a business type tag, but we're also, if we scroll down to one of the people also ask featured snippets, we're also being featured here with that exact same article for one of the top ranking questions that people have. So the main purpose with the structured data is essentially to expand your visibility to not only be visible for like the organic listing, but also build out that organic listing with more site links, with review snippets, increase your chances of being featured in the people also ask section, etc. And when it comes to measuring the success of your technical SEO efforts, it's less about making sure that the site audit in RFs or SEMrush is completely green, you have 0 errors. That's not necessarily the goal. The goal with any SEO initiative is to increase traffic, increase quality traffic, and ultimately turn that traffic into leads and ultimately revenue and customers. So the best way to track these changes is to look at those leading indicators. In this instance, it's traffic and it's clicks, and preferably through, solution-oriented bottom of the funnel searches. So here's a quick example where I filtered out all the keywords that have a buying intent. So software, tools, solutions related keywords, competitor alternatives, etc. If we look at the 6-month versus the previous 6-month graph right here, we can see a substantial increase in bottom of the funnel clicks. If we know that we've been doing a lot of technical improvements during that specific time, we also can know that these improvements have been successful and contributed to this increase in bottom of the funnel clicks. Everything I'm covering in this video, this is the exact framework that we run for every client at Exceed. And if you're watching this and thinking, well, I know I need this, but I don't have the team to execute it, well, a quick note here. At Exceed, we work with software companies who need SEO to drive actual pipeline. And we handle everything: strategy, content, backlinks, AI visibility optimization, and most importantly, we report on SQLs and revenue, not traffic. No long-term contracts. We use a rolling 30-day model, so we have to earn your business every single single month. If you want to talk about what that might look like for your company, the link is in the description below to book a quick intro call. All right, so up until this point, we've talked a lot about keyword strategy, we've talked a lot about content, as well as technical SEO. Now I want to dive deeper into authority building, meaning off-page SEO. And one metric to measure how authoritative your website is within your exact niche and category is using tools like SEMrush and RFs and look at this authority score. And here's an example from HubSpot where we can see that they have an authority score of 76 out of 100, which is incredibly good. And the reason they have that high authority score is essentially based on both the number, but of course also the quality of the backlinks pointing back to their website. So they have a lot of them and the quality of them are really good, but most of them are also industry relevant, meaning that they're coming from other websites that work and operate in the same industry and vertical as HubSpot. And I want to show you guys an actual example of this. So we're working with a company called BuildByte, and here is a placement that we built for them. So this is a list post written by Must, which is a competitor where they're rounding up a couple of construction software and tools. And we managed to get BuildByte mentioned here in this list. So this is both a brand mention, but also a link that is pointing back to their homepage. And both of these matter, right? So the backlink is extremely valuable in terms of the traditional SEO. So these type of backlinks will help you increase your authority, and by doing that also increase your Google rankings. But brand mentions is another part of the digital PR, and you don't necessarily need the link in order for it to be valuable. So the more brand mentions you have across relevant product roundups, the higher likelihood you have of being featured in AI overviews, but also ChatGPT responses and the output of large language models when prospects ask for software recommendations. And there's a few different ways to build these kind of backlinks and PR placements, and I wanted to go through each and every one of them. So the first one is of course guest posting, and the second one is link exchanging, meaning one-to-one link exchanges. And then we also have brand mention exchanges, which is similar to link exchange. You essentially just exchange mentions of brands. And of course you should always focus on quality over quantity here, and I'll show some examples later in this section. But the first strategy, if you want to do this yourself, is to run outreach campaigns to other authoritative domains within your industry with a value-driven pitch. So the first one that we discussed is of course link exchange, which means we link to you in exchange for a link back to our website. The second one is guest posting and guest blogging, meaning that, you know, we write an article for your domain and your domain links back to our website in return. And the third one is brand mention exchanges. So if you are publishing or already have a lot of product roundups, meaning articles that compare different softwares in your category, you can use that as leverage, especially if they are performing really well. Reach out to other players within your niche who create similar content and negotiate brand mention exchanges if it makes sense for both parties. But the absolute best strategy out of all of them is to create unique and original content. So let me explain this one in detail. If you are creating helpful, original, unique content and adding new information to the web, essentially, you will naturally attract a lot of organic backlinks, meaning that people will want to link back to your content if you are adding new information, maybe new data points, original research, anything that stands out and can't be found anywhere else. So if you have those data points or that original input, there's a lot of organic backlinks that will come as a result, because if people want to use those data points, they're going to have to link back to your article. Now let me show you guys how to think about the quality and the quantity discrepancy when it comes to building these backlinks. So let's assume that we are an HR and recruiting software and we're now looking to build some links. So we have an offer from Toolify.ai, decent authority, strong organic traffic, has been declining recently. But if we then go in and look a bit deeper at the domain, of course, this is relevant to SaaS, but it's not necessarily relevant to HR or recruiting. This is a very general website. So even though it has decent authority and decent organic traffic, I wouldn't double down on these type of links, at least not in quantity, because they lack that industry relevance. And then, of course, we're going to stumble upon kind of the best-in-class scenarios where we have a website and publisher that is extremely relevant to our niche and industry that also has very positive and healthy SEO metrics. So here we can see a super high authority score, breaking over 700K in organic traffic, and a very healthy and stable traffic trend. And if we look at this website, we already see a lot of relevance and niche relevance here for the recruiting and HR category. So of course, this is the best out of both worlds, where you have a strong SEO profile, but also very strong industry relevance. I also wanted to show you guys a quick look at the AI visibility piece and how you should think about backlinks and the digital PR from a pure AI visibility standpoint to increase your chances of being recommended by, let's say, ChatGPT ChatGPT. So we're tracking prompts for our clients through Scrunch, which is an AI visibility tracking tool. And here we're tracking a alternative or a competitor alternative prompt. So what are some alternatives to solution X? We can here see the historical trend based on how we're showing up for this prompt. So we have a very, very strong visibility for this specific prompt. We're essentially being mentioned in every single output. And then we can see an example prompt here. So we see that our client is being mentioned, but we also see that our client's article is being cited for this specific prompt, which is one way of showing up more. So creating your content around these specific prompts is of course going to influence both the citations, but also influence the actual output and your chances of being recommended. But then the missing piece here is looking at the third-party citations, meaning everyone that's written about this topic that is not you. So if we first have a look at the article rewrote, so we have written a exact article around this specific topic that's being cited almost every single time. And this is of course one of the strategies of getting yourself in the mix in large language models. But then also if we have a look at one of the other cited sources that are also being frequently used for this specific prompt or query, we also have Willow being mentioned here. And this goes for more of these type of alternative articles that I just showed you. So it's equally important to create your own content around these topics, but it's also very important to make sure your brand is being mentioned in third-party articles that are also being cited heavily. So this is the part of the video where I'm going to say something that most SEO agencies won't tell you because it would make their reporting look very, very bad. And that's the vanity metric problem. So traffic and keyword rankings are very easy to move and also easy to report on, but they don't tell you if you're making money. For the longest time, SEOs treated traffic as the core KPI. I'm not saying it's irrelevant, but it's not the end goal. It's a leading indicator showing whether you're on the right track or not. So let's start off with the leading indicators and the metrics that you should of course report on, but also treat them as leading indicators, not the end result that you're looking to achieve. And it's important to not position them as such. And some of those visibility metrics are what we recently talked about in the last step, which is of course domain authority, how trustworthy do search engines see your website as a whole, but also organic clicks and sessions. So this is the top of funnel traffic that's entering your site through search, also organic impressions, number of times that you're actually appearing in the search results, and then of course the organic CTR, so the percentage of impressions that then result in a click. You also want to be tracking the target commercial keywords and the ones that are ranking in the top 10. That's the part of the Google rankings where you'll get actual clicks and traffic, and the higher up you go on page one, the more traffic you'll see. And then we also have some engagement metrics, so time on page and scroll depth are great indicators of, you know, the quality and the relevance of your content for the people that are coming in and reading it. So if you see that people spend a lot of time on the site and that they scroll multiple times, you understand that, okay, this content is actually resonating well with our target audience. And then we also have the AI visibility piece. And these are metrics you can't necessarily track with, you know, out of the box Google tools like Search Console or Google Analytics, but you can use third-party tools like Scrunch, and there's a ton of other vendors to track the specific prompts that you want to show up for. So AI brand mentions is of course an extremely important metric, and this is essentially tells you how are you talked about and when are you mentioned in large language models. You also want to look at citations, so the number of times that AI is referencing or citing your content to answer a specific question. And the last part is AI referral traffic, and this is actually something you can track through Google Analytics, and this is essentially how many visitors that large language models are referring back to your website. So this has nothing to do with brand mentions, but simply how many people click your sources once it gets cited. But now we get to the good stuff, which of course is the hard KPIs. So the first ones, which are still kind of leading indicators, but of course the way more important metrics to track than just top of funnel traffic, and especially in B2B software and B2B SaaS, demos and trials, or sometimes even both, are the first step into the buying process and the sales conversation. So that number is extremely important to track, but what's even more important is how many of these are actually qualified leads. Sometimes you get a ton of demo bookings and trials that are just pure spam. So you also want to understand, well, how many of these are actually turning into a sales conversation, a discovery call. But then we get to the most important metrics, and that is of course pipeline. So out of all of these people that have booked the demo that are qualified, how many of those turn into actual sales opportunities? So that typically happens after the initial discovery call, when the prospect has, you know, expressed that they have a pain point or a need for your service, and the sales conversation continues. So that is I would say, one of the best metrics to track in terms of understanding the quality of your SEO program. But then of course the best of them all is the attributed revenue. So how many of these opportunities are actually turning into paying customers and the net new revenue for your business? And tracking SEO success success and attribution in general in B2B marketing specifically is getting increasingly harder. And this is something that is called the dark funnel. And what that essentially means is that there's a ton of different touch points throughout the buying journey that are extremely relevant. They influence buying decisions, but they don't show up in your analytics dashboard. So this could be, someone having a look at a LinkedIn post. They could see a paid advertisement. Maybe their CEO shares your brand on Slack. Maybe you get mentioned in a podcast, and then all of that leads to a Google search where they find your website and then ultimately convert. So what you'll be seeing in your attribution model and your analytics is these last two touch points. Everything before that is completely invisible to you. But there is one very simple solution to this problem, is to just ask your leads and your prospects, where did you first hear about us? That will give you not the full story. It might also not be 100% accurate 100% of the time, but what you will get is a ton of relevant data into which of the marketing touch points that influence this conversion the most. And if you compare that data with your GA4 or your last click data, you get a better understanding of the full picture. And this is exactly what we propose to all of our clients. You're not going to be able to 100% say exactly where all leads come from, but what you should instead look for is, of course, patterns, and patterns that people are engaging with your marketing efforts and also being influenced by them to ultimately convert into a qualified lead that then enters the later stages of the buying funnel. And in terms of expectations, this is going to vastly be different depending on if you're starting SEO from scratch or if you already have a built-up SEO presence and an SEO program that you're just looking to improve. But regardless, I would say that these metrics stay true. Of course, the leading indicators are extremely important to report on, but if you're a CMO, well, your chief executive officer will care way much less about these visibility indicators than the hard KPIs. And the same goes if you're an agency, your clients will care way much more about revenue than how many clicks they got last month. So let's focus on the hard KPIs in this section and what you should expect when launching this very revenue-focused SEO strategy. So in terms of the first 6 months, this is where you build the foundation. This is where you start producing content, building links, doing these optimizations. And in terms of demos and or trials, you should see between a 1.3 and 1.6x increase from the baseline where you started. And if we look at the qualified leads, you should see a 1.2 to 1.5x increase from the baseline where you started. And when we look at the pipeline, this is more of an early signal. You should see 1.2 to 1.5x, and the first deals are then also starting to close. So same kind of benchmark here, 1.2 to 1.4. And then if we have a look at the 12-month expectations, we're seeing that all of these numbers are drastically increasing and increasing quite fast. And this speaks to the compounding nature of SEO. Of course, it does take a bit of time to start getting those initial results and those initial demos and customers. But once you start getting that wheel running, and also once you start gathering enough insights and data from your previous SEO efforts, you'll be in a way better position. So everything that you did in the first 6 months will just keep continuing to compound together with the effort you do in the following 6 months. So everything in this video is connected. You can't skip to content if your technical foundation is completely broken. You can't build authority if your content doesn't exist yet. And to be honest, most companies don't fail at SEO because the tactics are wrong, but because they try to run them out of sequence. And the first 3 months is all about building the foundations and seeing the first success signals. You have done the technical audit, the crawl issues are fixed, the site architecture is cleaned up, and you now have a keyword map built around commercial intent, specifically low competition, high intent terms that you can win quickly. And the first couple of content pieces are published, the comparison content, alternative pages, and also use case pages. And the link building started in parallel from day 1, not after publishing content. So months 4 to 6 is all about momentum. The content starts indexing and climbing for mid-competition terms. The backlink profile is strengthening. Your domain authority is starting to move, and the organic demos and trials are appearing consistently in your CRM. And SQLs are becoming a reliable monthly number and not just a one-off. Your AI visibility is starting to emerge for branded and category queries, and this is where the compounding effort and the multipliers from section 7 is starting to show. Pipeline is moving, but attributed revenue is following. Month 7 to 12 is all about the compounding effort. So pages that are published in month 2 are now ranking on page 1. The topical authority is building, and Google starts trusting the site across the whole cluster. Organic is becoming a predictable, measurable revenue channel, and the 2 to 3x pipeline and revenue multipliers from section 7 are now materializing. And here's the one thing that separates winners from everyone else. Companies that succeed with SEO don't have a better product or a bigger budget. They simply commit to a system and they measure it correctly. The ones who typically fail, well, they bail after month 3 because the traffic graph hasn't moved and their agency is showing them the wrong metrics. If you're measuring SQLs from month 1, you'll see the signal early enough to stay the course. And it's important not to treat AI search as a separate workstream. So everything you've done for traditional search, the content, the authority, the citations, is the same foundation that gets you cited in ChatGPT and Perplexity. You don't need a separate AI SEO strategy, you just need one system executed well. So the brands that are dominating AI answers in 2026, well, they are the same brands that did the boring, consistent work for traditional search for the last 18 months. And remember, SEO is a compounding channel. The returns don't come from doing more, they come from doing the same thing consistently over time. And the compounding, of course, only starts when you start. The best time to start was probably 12 months ago, but the second best time is now. So now you've got the full picture of how SEO works in 2026, but the landscape is still shifting. So click here to watch the next video to learn the specific moves that you need to make right now before your competitors do. I'll see you there.